The man at my 5th birthday party. Most people don't remember much from when they were 5 years old. I'm sure my memories from that age are patchy and incomplete, like blurred snapshots rather than clear photographs. But one moment from my 5th birthday party sticks with me with unsettling clarity. It's one of those memories that doesn't make sense all at once until you piece together what you've been told later. And even now, nearly 30 years later, it feels strange that something so disturbing could be one of the earliest things I remember. My birthday was in July, in the middle of summer. My parents rented a small party room at the local community center, a place with beige walls, plastic tables, and giant windows looking out over the park. I remember the feeling of nervous excitement mixed with the heat of the July day, the smell of balloons and cake, and the happy noise of my friends running around. I wasn't shy, but I liked things to feel familiar, so having my party at the same place my older sister's birthday parties were held made me comfortable. Most of the party was just like you'd expect some kind of chaotic blur now. Kids running, screaming, passing around party hats, sticky fingers on paper plates. My mom was in her floral dress, always smiling, but with tired eyes behind her glasses. My dad kept telling jokes to the other parents in the corner, occasionally glancing my way. But in the middle of this happy mess, something happened that stands out sharply. I didn't know who he was, and I don't think my parents did either, at least not initially. We were all inside the community center. The doors were mostly shut, but not locked. The party had started for about an hour, and I was sitting at the cupcake table with some friends, waiting for the cake cutting. Then, without any warning, the door to the room opened, and a man stepped in. He didn't announce himself, didn't say anything. He just walked in, looking around quickly, like he didn't expect to be seen or caught. He was tall and thin, wearing a plain black baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, and a faded blue jacket that looked several sizes too big. Something about him was off, not in a cartoon, creepy guy way, but as if his presence didn't belong. I remember that feeling even now, like a shadow crossing where it shouldn't. At first, the adults barely noticed him. The room was noisy, people talking and laughing. But my mom and dad finally did when he came closer to our table. I was watching him carefully because, for a 5-year-old, he was a strange visitor. He crouched down beside me and looked at me directly. And the look in his eyes wasn't friendly or kind. It was unreadable, something cold and distant. "Hey there, buddy," he said slowly, his voice low and quiet. "You want to come with me? I'm your uncle." That sentence hit me with a confusing mix of feelings. I didn't have any uncles, and certainly no one who would show up uninvited at my birthday and talk like that. But I didn't say anything. I was too small and too startled. The man's gaze stayed locked on me, like he was waiting for me to respond. The room grew quieter as some of the parents noticed the strange man. My mom's face went pale, and my dad stood up quickly and stepped between me and the man. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" my dad asked, his voice firm but calm. The man straightened up suddenly, seemed to weigh his options for a moment, and then took a step back. "I was lost," he said, glancing nervously at the other people around. "I just wanted to see my nephew. I didn't mean any harm." But his eyes told a different story. No one else spoke, but the mood shifted instantly, from festive to tense. Someone had already slipped out of the room to call security. The man looked around, realized he was trapped in that space with too many witnesses, and suddenly lunged forward, not at me, but pushing past my dad to try to escape. My dad caught him near the door. They struggled briefly, then more adults rushed in, crossing the threshold from other rooms, and the man was quickly restrained by a couple of people until security arrived. I was frozen in place, still sitting on my chair, the image of this strange man burning in my mind. My mom scooped me up and hugged me tight, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay." Later, my parents told me what I couldn't understand then, that the man was a stranger, someone who had been seen around the neighborhood that week, asking odd questions about kids my age. Police said he was wanted for trying to lure children into his car. Thankfully, the quick response by the adults at the party stopped him before he could do any harm. The police arrested him that day, and my parents said he'd been on the run from several towns, moving stealthily from place to place. Almost no one had realized how close something awful had come to happening. My parents thanked the adults who had jumped in to help, and they later made sure the community center locked its doors during parties. When I look back on that day, I'm struck by the strange mixture of memories, a sunny birthday party and that sudden presence of danger. I don't remember the exact look on the man's face beyond that cold, unreadable gaze, but I remember feeling confused, scared, and oddly disconnected. I was so young, and yet that moment shaped a lot of the way I grew up, how I understand trust and safety. It's still surreal to me how one of my earliest memories is also one of my most unsettling. Most kids can't explain why they remember certain things, but for me, the memory has stayed exactly because it was interrupted by something dark and wrong, before being pulled back into the light by my parents and their calm, protective presence. I don't think about that day with panic anymore. It's a quiet story from the past, something I tell sometimes when people ask about my childhood. It reminds me how important it is to watch over each other, and sometimes how quickly things can change from ordinary to dangerous. But mostly it reminds me that even in moments when you're too young to fully understand what's happening, the people you trust can stop the worst from becoming real. So that's the story of the man at my 5th birthday party. It's not some ghost or monster tale, just a real moment when something bad almost happened, saved by quick adults and a little bit of luck. And even all these years later, it's a memory I carry quietly, like a warning to always stay alert, but also a reassurance that safety sometimes comes from the people who love you most. The birthday sleepover. My 13th birthday was supposed to be a big deal. Not just because I was turning 13, but because it was the first birthday where I was allowed to have a sleepover. Up until that point, my parents had been pretty strict about overnight guests. Not that I blamed them. Sleepovers can get loud, and they knew how my group of friends could get when we were excited about something. But this time, with everything feeling so official, I was beyond thrilled. I remember the day like it was yesterday, though it's been over 10 years now. The sunlight filtering through the curtains that Saturday afternoon, the faint smell of my mom's homemade pizza baking in the oven, the way the house felt extra warm and cozy with the frosting smeared birthday cake sitting on the counter. My best friends Megan, Jess, and Carly were all coming over after dinner. We had planned our party for weeks, watching movies, eating junk food, gossiping until late. Everything started out perfectly normal. The kind of normal that you don't give a second thought to until something goes sideways. Megan arrived first, carrying a duffel bag filled with sleeping bags and pillows. Jess and Carly followed soon after, chattering about the new book Megan had convinced all of us to read last month. We crowded into my room, pulled out our sleeping mats, and took turns showing off the presents I just opened. Later, once the pizzas were eaten and we were sipping soda around my beanbag chairs, I remember feeling a strange mixture of excitement and awkwardness. 13 felt like a doorway between childhood and something else. I could feel it even then, subtle but persistent, like a quiet hum underneath the day's noise. As the night deepened and the movie started, we realized two things. One, we were all getting sleepy, and two, the power flickered a few times. The blackout didn't last long, just a couple of seconds here and there, but it was enough for the atmosphere in the room to shift. It wasn't scary exactly, more like a low vibration of unease, nothing that stopped us from laughing or whispering under our breath during the scary parts of the movie. After the third movie ticked past midnight, the power went out again. This time, it stayed off. My parents were downstairs, saying they were going to bed early, so they weren't too worried when the lights went off completely. Megan pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight app, saying she had enough battery to keep it on for a while. We gathered closer, huddled around my desk lamp, which was battery operated, and told silly ghost stories to pass time. That was when things started to feel different, more real. We all froze. None of us was expecting anyone else at the house. My parents had mentioned no one else was coming, and the neighborhood was usually quiet at night except for the occasional car driving by. I thought maybe it was the wind, but the knocks were deliberate, slow, and firm. Maybe it's just a delivery guy, Jess offered, voice barely above a whisper. No deliveries tonight, I said, but even as I spoke the words, my stomach churned. We waited for a few seconds, then another knock, this time louder and more urgent. Megan whispered that maybe I should check, but the thought terrified me. Not that I thought someone was hostile, just intrusive. It was after midnight, the kind of hour that usually meant everyone was asleep or at least indoors. I slicked out of the room quietly, told the others to stay put, and crept down the stairs. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. As I approached the front door, I peered through the peephole. There was a man standing there. He wasn't wearing anything particularly noticeable, just a gray hoodie and jeans, but it was the way he stood that made my skin crawl. He looked younger than I thought, maybe late 20s, but his face was hard to make out in the dim porch light. He was looking right at the door, but not directly at me, more like just staring at the door itself, like he was waiting for it to open. "Hello?" I said softly, hoping to sound braver than I felt. The man didn't respond. He just stood there, motionless except for a slight shift in stance. My heart pounded loudly in my ears. I turned away, almost running back upstairs. When I got to my room, the others were crouched together, and Carly looked ready to burst into tears. "We should call someone," Jess said urgently, but my own thoughts were racing faster than I could speak. "I locked the door right after Megan got here," I said, more to convince myself than anyone else. We gathered in the middle of the room, whispering about what to do next. Megan suggested calling my parents, but I wanted to keep them out of it if possible. They were supposed to be sleeping after all, and I didn't want to wake them in the middle of the night unless something really bad happened. At that moment, the knocks came again. 3 loud, sharp raps, this time on the side back door. We all gasped. I remember looking at the clock, 12:15 a.m., and an overwhelming feeling of cold dread settled in my stomach. "Don't go anywhere near the doors," Megan said, her voice trembling. We moved to the center of my room, pulling the dresser in front of the bedroom door just in case. We switched off the flashlight and tried to listen over the pounding of our own hearts. The man outside didn't knock again, but the sound of footsteps circling the house was unmistakable. Slow, deliberate, pacing from the front side, around to the back, and then to the front again. I thought about screaming, about calling 911 right then and there, but rationalized still that maybe it was some weird prank. Someone who got a number mixed up, a friend of a friend trying to mess with us. That entire night, my teenage brain clung to explanations that made sense. At some point, the footsteps stopped. Minutes passed in a sort of frozen silence. No whispers, no breathing, just the sound of our own pulse hammering in our ears. Then the doorknob to my bedroom door started to jiggle, lightly at first, then more strongly. Somewhere halfway between panic and disbelief, I yelled, "Who's there? Go away." No answer. I can tell you now, years later, that the fear I felt was pure and unfiltered. Not the kind you see in movies, with dramatic music and quick cuts, but the simple gut twist of real danger you sense when the world maybe isn't as safe as you thought it was. The dresser held. The knocking at my room stopped. Outside, all went silent. We sat awake the rest of the night, clutching each other until dawn. The sleepover ended quietly the next morning, with my parents waking up confused. The police called, and a search launched around the neighborhood. Later that day, officers told us they had found a suspect several blocks over, a man with a record of burglary and stalking, who had been spotted wandering the streets late at night. His hoodie matched the description, and when they arrested him, he was carrying a set of lockpicks and a small crowbar. The police told us this man had tried to get into at least 3 homes that night before flat out giving up on some, and the timing of his attempt on our house lined up exactly with when we were home. I never found out exactly why he chose my house, or if he knew I was having a sleepover. Somehow, the questions didn't feel as important as the dawning realization that the world outside my bedroom door could be far darker than I ever imagined. For years afterward, I avoided sleepovers. Locked doors became a mantra. I even hid spare keys less and less. I watched how other kids' parents talked about safe zones, about the neighborhood watch, about police patrols. Sometimes I think about that night, the way the silence felt more dangerous than any noise, how the dark seemed to move just beyond the edges of the porch light. That birthday sleepover was supposed to be a happy memory. Instead, it became the moment I realized that safety is something you have to guard for yourself. And sometimes, even behind locked doors, you might hear someone waiting to get in. It's nothing like the carefree joy I thought 13 would bring, but it's real. The birthday dinner reservation. I've thought about telling this story 100 times before, mostly when I'm lying in bed late at night, staring at the ceiling and replaying the events in my head. My 18th birthday wasn't anything wild or out of control like you might expect. If anything, it was incredibly ordinary. That's why it sticks with me. It was supposed to be simple. I never fancied big celebrations, no huge party, no wild nights, no embarrassing moments caught on video. For my birthday that year, back in late October, I planned a quiet dinner with just two of my closest friends, Sarah and Marcus. Yeah, two friends named Marcus on Marcus's birthday. That joke never got old. We had reserved a small table at this new Italian place downtown called Luca. It had just opened that summer, and a few of us had heard good things. It felt like a safe choice. Cozy, familiar, and nothing flashy. I remember the afternoon had a dull gray light filtering through, typical for that time of year. The day crawled by with me at school staring at the clock, hoping it would speed up. Sarah texted me twice, asking if I remembered the reservation was at 7. I actually almost forgot, to be honest. My mind was pretty scattered with schoolwork and everything. As 6:30 hit, I showered, changed into a shirt that wasn't a hoodie, and caught the bus downtown where the restaurant was. When I got there, Sarah and Marcus were already waiting outside, pacing like they were excited. The restaurant wasn't very busy yet, which suited me. It's an awkward experience when places are packed on a birthday, making you feel like everyone's staring. The hostess led us to our table near the back of the restaurant, by a window that looked out on a narrow alley. I spotted the menus and scanned them. I'd been craving that lasagna for a while, so when the waiter came, I ordered that along with a soda. We chatted about nothing in particular, just jokes about school, about turning 18, about stupid plans for the weekend. It felt safe, comfortable. Then about 15 minutes in, I noticed the waiter glance toward the front door multiple times, just subtle looks, nothing that seemed off in the moment. I thought maybe they were waiting for someone else or just keeping an eye on tables opening up. After we ordered, I leaned back and looked out the window into the alley. It was a narrow lane with some dumpsters and the kind of dim, flickering light you expect in alleys, kind of gloomy at dusk but nothing threatening at the time. The street lamps were on, but the shadows stretched long. I know now that the alley had been in my peripheral vision through the meal, but I didn't really register it. At one point, Sarah got up to use the restroom, which was just by the entrance. That left Marcus and me alone at the table, and I remember catching a faint noise, a sort of scraping or shuffling coming from that alley outside. I turned my head slowly to look, but whoever or whatever was there had moved out of the light by the time I looked directly. I didn't say anything because I'm the type to avoid making a scene, especially in quiet restaurants. I told myself it was probably just a delivery guy or some worker closing up back there. We were too early for the night crowd, so maybe he was just finishing something. Sarah came back with this strange look on her face. She said she thought she saw someone standing in the shadows near the front door, but when she looked again, no one was there. We joked about it, her paranoia on Halloween night getting the better of her. The rest of the dinner passed like that, uneventful, but with a mild undercurrent of something off. About halfway through, the waiter came back to clear our plates. This time, there was a man standing right behind him, for a split second as he chatted with us. He was older, maybe late 40s, with a thin frame and eyes I didn't quite catch. He had this weird way of clenching his jaw, almost like he was nervous or angry. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I realized he was something of an unusual presence. After we paid, we stepped out into the chilly night and started heading toward the bus stop. Sarah and Marcus were talking about grabbing some late-night snacks somewhere, but I just wanted to get home. On the walk there, I noticed a man trailing us from a distance down the sidewalk. I didn't want to scare the others, so I kept my voice low and asked if they could keep an eye out. Looking back on it all, the thing that haunts me is how easily it could have spiraled. If we'd been alone in the restaurant, if one of us had gone outside for a smoke break or walk, if I hadn't distracted myself with food and conversation instead of paying attention to the flickering shadow in the back window. That birthday dinner reservation could have been something else entirely. Innocent plans can hide danger in the smallest details, the briefest moments. I don't think I'll ever forget just how close we might have come to something truly frightening, all because we didn't think twice about that shadowy alley or the quiet man behind the waiter. It serves as a reminder that even the most ordinary nights, my simple, quiet 18th birthday, hold unexpected dangers if you're not paying attention. The birthday gift at the door. My 21st birthday was never supposed to be anything huge. At least that's how I remember it from the start. I was in college, living in a small, worn-down apartment not far from campus with my roommate, Brianna. My birthday fell on a Tuesday that year, midweek, and since we both had classes and jobs, my friends decided to keep things low-key for the actual day. A simple dinner that evening, followed by a bigger get-together on the weekend. Nothing too flashy or out of the ordinary. I mostly stayed home that day, between classes and a long afternoon shift at the campus library. Brianna was out with a few friends, since she'd already celebrated her own birthday a couple of weeks earlier. I remember waking up, rolling out of bed later than usual, and swiping through my phone over coffee, scrolling past the usual happy birthday messages from people I hadn't talked to in months. The morning felt normal, quiet. The apartment itself was small, just 2 bedrooms, a cramped living room, and a kitchen that from the moment we'd moved in had small fluorescent lights that flickered and always made me feel a little on edge after dark. But on the morning of my birthday, it didn't matter. I was just glad the sky was clear, the sunlight filtering soft and golden through the thin curtains. That afternoon, I had an afternoon class, which ended around 4. Brianna was still out when I got home. She had plans with her friends for later, so neither of us was really expecting to be home for the evening. I cooked something simple, a frozen pizza I'd picked up the night before, and sat on the couch, scrolling on my phone while the microwave hummed quietly. There was a soft knock at the door just after 5 p.m., while I was halfway through setting the timer on the pizza. It was the first unexpected noise of the day I'd really noticed. I wasn't expecting anyone. Brianna's plan was to come back late, and the neighbors rarely stopped by unannounced. I went to the door cautiously. When I looked through the peephole, I didn't see anyone, just the empty hallway. I blinked. Maybe it was just someone walking past, knocking on the wrong door, or testing the handle. I shrugged, turned the deadbolt, and opened it just a crack. That's when I saw it. A small, plain box sitting on the floor just inside the doorway, wrapped in dull brown paper, tied with a thin, twisted red string. No card, no name, nothing. I half-kicked the box inside, didn't want it out there in the hallway, and closed the door quickly. It wasn't unusual for packages to be left like that sometimes if the delivery person couldn't get a hold of the resident. Maybe it was from Brianna, or one of my friends, something they'd planned as a surprise after all. Still, it felt odd. I frowned at the box. It was smaller than the usual birthday presents I'd imagined. No ribbons, no birthday tag or anything that tied it to me specifically. Just the brown paper and red string. I sat back down. The pizza timer dinged. I ate in a quiet, distracted way, my eyes flicking to the box every few minutes. Finally, after what felt like an hour, I stood and crossed the room to the door again. There was no rush to open it, but curiosity gnawed at me. What if it was some prank left by one of Brianna's friends? Or something worse? I untied the string, the paper crackling softly under my fingers. Inside was a small wooden box, about the size of a jewelry case, with a dark finish. No markings or carvings, just smooth wood polished by time or care. I hesitated for a moment, then I lifted the lid. Inside, lying on a bed of faded, yellowed cloth, was a small, old-fashioned music box key, the kind you'd wind to make it play. It was oddly light in my hand, made of tarnished brass. The faint scent of something like pipe smoke and vanilla wafted out. I lifted the key, turning it over thoughtfully. There was no note, no explanation. I shrugged and set the box down again. I don't know why I didn't feel more alarmed. Maybe I told myself it was a gift from an anonymous admirer, or maybe Brianna planned a secret present and had sent it ahead by mistake. It was an eccentric gift, to be sure. I wound the key slowly, and the music box came to life. A soft, eerie tune that filled the room, the notes high and tinkling, looping endlessly. There was something old and haunting about the melody. It pulled at the edge of my vision, made me feel like I was somewhere else for a moment. I sat with the music playing until Brianna came home around 8. I told her about the box. She looked at it, a little uneasy. "Did you open it?" she asked quietly. "Who do you think sent it?" "I don't know," I said. "No one here has mentioned it. No calls or texts about any gifts." I shuffled the box around on the kitchen table, telling her I was going to set it aside until the weekend. She shrugged, but she seemed bothered too. That night I went to bed feeling a strange mix of curiosity and unease. I tried to ignore the music box, but every now and then I heard the faintest echo of its tune in my dreams. The next morning I woke up to my phone buzzing, a text from Brianna. "Did you see the news? Weird burglaries near campus last night." I tapped the headline and read through the brief report. Someone had been breaking into apartments off campus, mostly targeting women living alone with roommates. No one had been hurt, but small valuables had gone missing. The police were investigating. My heart quickened. Could the music box be connected? It was just a box after all. But the timing, the mystery. I told Brianna I was going to call campus security to check if the apartment complex had any known issues. They reassured me there had been no suspicious activity the day before. Nothing reported at our address. Still, they offered to send a patrol around, just to be safe. Later that day, my friends called to wish me happy birthday again, making plans for the weekend party. But my mind wasn't on that. The unease gnawed at me, growing heavier with every moment I thought about the music box. That evening, as Brianna and I were watching a movie, I heard a faint tapping at the door again, just like the day before. My stomach dropped. I went to the peephole and looked cautiously. This time, a man stood there, just outside, about mid-30s or 40s, wearing a dark jacket and a cap, his face obscured by shadows. I didn't recognize him, neither did Brianna when I described him. He didn't say anything, just stood there, silent, as if waiting. I didn't open the door. I called campus security again. They said they'd send someone immediately. Minutes later, a patrol car pulled up, and the man disappeared into the night. The officers took a report and told me not to open the door to anyone I didn't know. The next day was even worse. Random small things around the apartment were out of place. The chair slightly shifted, the fridge door ajar even though I was sure I'd closed it. Strange footprints in the dust near the door. Subtle, almost as if someone had been inside while we weren't watching. We called the police again, and they came to inspect. They dusted for prints, searched the area, and found a footprint matching the man seen the night before. The officers warned us to be vigilant and said they were increasing patrols. Still, the music box sat in the corner, quiet, its key beside it on the table. Then, around 3 a.m. the following night, the box started playing again, on its own. I woke up to the eerie tinkle, echoing through the apartment. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, listening. I moved to the living room, and the music stopped the moment I switched the light on. The box was closed, sitting right where I'd left it. I told Brianna, and we agreed to get rid of it. We bundled the music box into a bag and threw it in the dumpster outside. Weeks passed without incident. The police identified the man seen lurking near our apartment as a serial prowler, whose name I won't mention. They arrested him after catching him breaking into a neighboring building. When they searched his belongings, they found a collection of stolen items from local residences and counted several boxes much like the one I found, all containing personal items taken from victims, including small, creepy trinkets he used like trophies. Looking back now, it's chilling to think that something as innocent as a birthday gift, a simple music box key in a small wooden box, could be part of a predator's game. It wasn't a gift at all. It was a warning, a way to unsettle me, to remind me that I was being watched. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd opened the box right away, or if I'd taken the key and wound it more. That day, my birthday, started just like any other. But that small, quiet package at my door was a door itself, a door to fear, control, and the very real presence of danger lurking in the most ordinary places. It taught me that even the most innocent gestures, or almost innocent, like a birthday gift, can become terrifying when they come from the wrong person.